Let's talk about feminism.
Do we have to? Can't we just talk about Star Wars instead? No. Fine.
%47 of Americans say they don't consider themselves feminists.
Huh. Interesting. I wonder how much of that total is made up of women.
And at the same time, 94% said they believe that men and women should be social, political, and economic equals.
I wonder if you understand that it is possible to have that opinion and not be a feminist. Let's find out.
Which is the definition of feminism.
Guess not.
So what gives? Do we even need feminism anymore?
In the West? No. Women have equal, and in some cases superior, protection under the law. First and second wave feminism succeeded in securing equality for women.
These days, you're not going to find a whole lot of people who think women shouldn't vote. Yet in the 1800s and 1900s, most women didn't care whether they could vote or not.
Okay, why are we going back to the 18 and 1900s in relation to your question of whether we still need feminism?
But America was industrializing, and some women had strong political views they wanted to exercise. First-wave feminists wanted the right to get an education, to work, get a divorce, own property, and their bodies. And in order to get these things, they needed a vote.
And they got it. And they've had it ever since. What's your point?
These ladies first rallied behind abolitionists, but split on their support for the 15th Amendment because it would give black men the right to vote, but leave out women.
So early feminists were racists and sexists. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
When that amendment passed, feminists pushed forward with a women's-only suffrage movement. They protested, went on hunger strikes, were jailed, beaten by police, and institutionalized.
Uh-huh. Things were bad in the past, and they are no longer that way. What does this have to do with the necessity of feminism now?
And by 1920, it paid off. The 19th Amendment went into effect, and all women could vote for the first time.
Uh-huh. But why do I think we're not done with the history lesson just yet? Call it a hunch.
But most black women wouldn't get to exercise that right for another 40 years because of state voter suppression laws. And when they finally did, it would be thanks to the civil rights movement, not feminists.
Yes, the civil rights movement, supported by men and women, black and white, to ensure rights for all people, regardless of their race or gender. A hard-won American milestone, and it's been in place for decades. And again, I have to ask, so what?
The women's movement made slow progress after suffrage, but the Depression kept it at bay. After World War II, when Rosie the Riveter got sent back home, feminism found itself creeping back onto the national stage.
At this point, I'm just watching the slideshow and truncated history lesson with the same question hanging in the air. I'm dying to know where all of this is leading.
By then, it was the 60s, and...
You are not going to sit quietly any longer. You are murdering us.
I had to look up what this clip was referring to, as we're just shown it without any context. The woman protesting there is Alice Wolfson, and this took place at a hearing in regards to the safety and efficacy of the first version of the birth control pill. The way the pill was concocted at the time was causing severe side effects in women, and in some cases it is believed to have caused death. The results of both the hearings and the protests, like the one Wolfson took part in, led to changes in the birth control formula to make them much safer, as well as reforms within federal drug laws to ensure that patients had informed consent prior to taking medications. This is, in part, why every medication advertised these days on TV has a laundry list of potential side effects announced, alongside the drug's purported benefits. I just thought it was interesting. More interesting than what the video is actually telling us. But on we go.
This movement drew distinctions between sex and gender and demanded access to jobs, education, and adoption of the Equal Rights Amendment. It would mandate equal pay for equal work, laying the foundation to make a legal case against your employer.
The Equal Rights Amendment, or ERA, was first introduced in 1923. Made up of only 3 sentences, the meat of the proposed amendment resided in the first. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. The amendment was debated over the next 60 years and came close to being made a part of the Constitution in the early 1980s, but ultimately it could find no further state support. Part of the opposition to the amendment was that after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the various additions thereto over the ensuing years, the thrust of the proposed amendment became somewhat redundant. As well, many women opposed the amendment on the grounds that its simple yet broad language would eliminate those barriers that protected women from many of the hardships that men, at the time, bore alone, like the draft into the military service. I have no idea why our speaker mentions the Equal Rights Amendment, but doesn't tell us that it is effectively defunct. You'd almost think she's framing a very deceptive narrative.
Time magazine even crowned women Man of the Year.
Not sure how much credence you want to give Time magazine's sense of taste, but hey, it's your video.
And the 70s brought Title IX, which banned sex-based discrimination in federally funded schools.
Yeah, if only every school would follow Title IX, I would be a happy man.
And Roe v. Wade established abortion rights. Despite the successes, second-wave feminists were dividing. There were anarcho-feminists, Amazon feminists, and separatists.
And now we have black feminists, and white feminists, and intersectional feminists, and sex-positive feminists. You're not going to suggest that divisions amid the ideology have vanished, are you?
And then there were still lingering barriers of race and class. By the 1980s, third-wave feminism wasn't so much a building block as it was a change of course.
You say change of course, I say quest for relevance.
If feminism is all things to all people, then what is it?
That is an excellent question, Bell Hooks. If feminism means everything, then it really does mean nothing. I wonder if our speaker is going to offer an answer to that one.
Women's groups continued to splinter, leaving no space for a single-issue feminist. And people started to wonder, is feminism dead?
Oh, it's not dead. I'll assure you of that. It's a self-perpetuating hate machine now.
It wasn't. It just looked different. Instead of protesting, feminists injected their beliefs into grander mediums like television and moved to define sexuality for themselves.
You show clips of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Sex and the City. 2 television shows created by men. I guess the feminist message really does need men to carry it along.
And incremental changes were happening across the country. The first female Supreme Court justice was appointed, and then the second. Female governors and senators were being elected to office. Rates on women entering law and medical school were on the rise. And Anita Hill made America face sexual harassment in the workplace.
Okay, so you're making a very strong case that nearly all of the previous barriers to women's success have been wiped off the map. Female Supreme Court justices? I mean, you can't really get higher than that in this country, short of becoming president. Oh, right. Well, maybe next time.
Feminists are now part of the digital age and are beginning to unite under the same goals as previous generations.
What same goals? You just reviewed the bulk of the feminist and women's rights successes over the last 100 years. All of the things that were unequal have been equalized, and then some. What are you talking about?
My mom says patriarchy. I say intersectionality.
You and your mother are both a few pills short of a month's supply.
My mom says protest march. I say online organizing.
One requires physical effort, planning, and personal risk. The other can be done while drinking your latte at Starbucks. Now, I might disagree with her, but I respect your mother far more than I do you.
The second wave's equal pay for equal work is now the gender pay gap.
Earnings gap. It is an earnings gap. See, this is why third wave feminism falls flat on its face when arguing for its own continued relevance. It props itself up on lies and distortions. You're arguing against it here, not proving its necessity.
If past feminists had owned sexuality, nowadays they're taking to the streets to protect it.
I was going to show some pictures from some recent slut walks here to show how they're really protecting sexuality these days, but I'd rather not make my viewers ill. I am a benevolent patriarch, you see.
I have chosen to no longer be apologetic for my femaleness and for my femininity.
Okay. I'm curious to know who was demanding you to apologize for being what you are, at least here in America. I'm sure it's different in other parts of the world, but Fusion is focusing only on the history of feminism in the US. So, yeah?
Some have been vocal about not committing to the word. Others have taken it back because without a movement, none of this was possible. The fact of the matter is women still don't make equal pay for equal work.
Yes, they do. If you know of an employer who isn't doing so, they are breaking federal law. Call the authorities.
The US is still the only industrialized nation without paid family leave.
I'm not so much against the idea of paid family leave, so long as the benefits are available to both mothers and fathers. The economics of the issue are beyond me, though, so I'm sure it's far more complicated than just flipping a light switch.
We pay tax on tampons.
Tampon tax? Seriously? This is an issue that rates up there with getting the vote. Can you see why the argument for feminism is so shaky these days?
Are told rape culture doesn't exist.
Rape culture does not exist in the West. Rape is vilified here. Rapists are neither excused of nor celebrated for their crimes. Stop lying.
All while breastfeeding in public is still met with a side eye.
A side eye. A funny look. Really? How did any of you survive high school?
And we still haven't managed to elect a woman to the highest office. Rather, we've actively chosen this man.
Grab him by the pussy. I could do anything.
It is indeed incredible just how horrific a candidate Hillary Clinton had to be to lose to a human cartoon like Donald Trump. I can only hope that both the Democrats and the Republicans have learned a lesson or two by the time the next election rolls around. But if past is prologue, I seriously doubt it.
Some say we need a women's movement more than ever.
That's it? That's your answer to your thesis question of, do we even need feminism anymore? Your answer is, some say that we do. I sat through all of this malarkey for some say? Well, 47% of the US population says that feminism as an identity isn't important, while still agreeing with what you say is the definition of feminism. What does that tell you? Or are you unwilling to listen and believe? As always, thank you for watching.